When this shy teen stepped onto the AGT stage, nobody expected a miracle, until her first note left the judges paralyzed. What happened next shocked the entire arena and created the most unforgettable golden buzzer moment ever. If you believe in pure talent and powerful stories, hit subscribe to KindnessVerse now. Massive America's Got Talent arena buzzed with electricity, the kind of restless excitement that only comes when thousands of people gather with the hope of witnessing something unforgettable. The lights danced in swirling patterns overhead, cameras glided along rails, and judges flipped through their notes as they prepared for another audition. Nothing seemed unusual. Nothing suggested the next performer would shift the entire energy of the room. Brr. The backstage doors opened. The shadows emerged a small figure. Leah Calderon, a 17-year-old Filipino-American girl with soft features, wide, nervous eyes, and a vintage silver microphone cupped tightly in her hands. It gleamed under the spotlight, but her hands were trembling too hard for her to notice. The audience's chatter slowed. Something about her presence, a mixture of vulnerability and quiet determination, pulled all attention toward her like a magnetic force. Bar. He took her first step onto the stage. Another, footfall landed with the weight of a story she hadn't yet told. Hosts watched her from the wings, exchanging curious glances. Even seasoned crew members, usually unfazed by nervous teenagers, paused. There was something different about her, the kind of fragile brilliance that made people instinctively lower their voices. Aya reached the center of the stage and stopped just a few feet from the bright X taped on the floor. The lights dimmed slightly to spotlight her. She swallowed hard, the old microphone clutched like a lifeline. Simon leaned forward first. He always did when someone unusual walked onto the stage. His eyes narrowed, not with criticism, but with curiosity. Heidi and Sophia followed, softening their posture, sensing the tremble in the girl's stance. Howie sat upright, sensing the tension instantly. The murmuring in the audience faded until the only sound was the faint hum of the studio equipment. The voice of the stage manager came through the speakers. Next performer, Leah Calderon. Leah forced herself to lift her chin. Her voice, barely above a whisper, drifted out into the cavernous room. "Hi, I'm Leah, I'm 17. Even her introduction quivered. Sophia exchanged a sympathetic look with Heidi. The crowd murmured softly, encouraging her, but the judges could see the fear, real fear, shaking the girl's hands. Simon rested his elbows on the desk. "Simon, you seem nervous. Don't worry, you're safe here. Tell us, what brings you to AGT?" Leah looked at the microphone in her hands again, her fingers smoothing over the faded nameplate on it. She took a shaky breath. "I brought this," she whispered. The audience tilted their heads in confusion. Simon's eyebrows lifted. He pointed gently toward the microphone. "That looks old. Why did you bring that?" Leah blinked fast, holding back tears. Her voice cracked on the very first word. "It belonged to my grandfather." She stopped again, swallowing her grief. The silence in the arena grew deeper, more intentional. People leaned forward. Leah continued, voice trembling. "He used to sing to me when I was little. He always said I had a voice, but I never believed him." A tear rolled down her cheek. "He passed away last year. And he never heard me sing properly." Her shoulders shook as she steadied herself. "I promised him that one day I'd try, that I'd be brave, that I'd sing using his mic so he's still with me." A ripple of emotion washed across the judges' table. Sophia covered her mouth. Heidi placed a hand over her heart. Even Howie nodded softly, visibly touched. But Simon didn't move. He simply locked eyes with her, his expression unreadable but intense. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and gentle. "Simon, Leah, that's a beautiful reason, and I'm glad you're here." Her breath hitched. But then something unexpected happened. The room didn't cue the music. Leah stood frozen, waiting. A long, uncomfortable pause stretched through the studio. The audience looked around. The judges exchanged puzzled glances. Even the technicians seemed confused. It wasn't a technical issue. It was something else, something unspoken lingering in the air. Simon lifted a hand toward Leah. "Take your time," he said. "Whenever you're ready." But Leah wasn't ready. Her hands trembled. Her chest rose and fell too quickly. Her eyes darted from one judge to the next like she was searching for something, Permission, maybe, or courage. The pressure on her shoulders was enormous. This stage, this dream, this promise to her grandfather. It all crashed down at once. She closed her eyes tightly. The audience could see the battle happening behind her eyelids. The doubt, the fear, the memories of quiet nights singing alone in her room. The image of her grandfather smiling at her with so much pride that it hurt. When she opened her eyes again, they were glistening. And then she did something that made the entire arena hold its breath. She lifted the vintage microphone up to her lips. The gesture was slow, deliberate, reverent, like she was reaching across time to hold someone's hand. The judges stopped moving, the audience stopped whispering, even the cameras seemed to steady, waiting. Then Leah whispered almost to herself, "For you, Grandpa, please stay with me." Something shifted. A small wind from the air vents brushed her hair. The spotlight warmed her face. And for just a moment, she looked like a completely different person, still trembling, still scared, but grounded by something deeper than nerves. The music finally cued. A single soft chord filled the arena. Leah inhaled, a deep, unsteady breath that carried every memory, every promise, every hope she had ever held. And as she opened her mouth to sing, the camera zoomed in. The judges leaned forward. The audience leaned in. The world seemed to stop spinning, fade out. The first note left Leah's lips like a whisper carried on a beam of light, gentle, trembling, almost fragile. But the moment it reached the judges' table, something astonishing happened. The entire arena froze. Not a single person moved. Not a cough, not a shuffle, not even the rustling of fabric. The silence was absolute. It wasn't the kind of silence that comes from uncertainty or confusion. It was the kind that comes from awe, deep, unexpected, breathtaking awe, because the shy, trembling girl who walked onto the stage just moments ago had just revealed a voice that sounded nothing short of heavenly. Her tone floated through the room with a purity no microphone could polish and no studio trick could replicate. It was raw, natural, completely unforced, a crystalline, bell-like sound that made even the camera operators, who had heard thousands of performers, freeze behind their equipment. Sophia's eyes widened first. She turned her head slowly toward Heidi, whispering, "Oh my God," but the words barely made it past her lips. Howie leaned forward, elbows on the desk, his expression transforming from curiosity to disbelief. He wasn't blinking. He didn't want to miss a second. Simon, who began the performance sitting upright, slowly set his pen down without breaking eye contact. His expression grew still, too still. Those who knew him recognized that expression instantly. It was the look Simon Cowell wore only when he realized he was witnessing something rare, something world-class. But Leah didn't see any of that. Her eyes were closed, and in that moment, she wasn't standing on the AGT stage. She was standing in her grandfather's living room, small, warm, filled with the smell of old books and jasmine tea. The memory washed over her like a soft wave as she sang, guiding her voice, steadying her heart. The audience watched her transform before their eyes. With every passing second, her voice grew more confident, more grounded, more powerful. Her trembling hands relaxed, her shoulders lifted. She stepped forward slightly, as if following the echo of her own song. By the time she reached the first chorus, the entire energy of the arena had The timid girl who had walked on stage earlier was gone, replaced by someone luminous, someone born to stand under a spotlight. The music swelled behind her, violins easing into the melody, drums brushing lightly in the background. It wasn't overwhelming. It supported her, lifted her, framed her voice like a portrait in gold. She hit a note in the upper register, clean, effortless, so beautifully controlled that people gasped aloud. A man in the front row covered his mouth with both hands. A teenage girl grabbed her mother's arm. A little boy sitting on his father's shoulders whispered, "Dad, is she an angel?" The father couldn't answer. Backstage, the hosts stopped talking mid-sentence. Their expressions softened as they watched her on the monitor. Crew members paused with headsets still in hand, drawn to the screen like moths to a flame. Even security guards, usually stoic and unbothered, slowly turned toward the stage. Leah stepped into the second verse, her voice dropping into a warm, rich, lower tone, so full of emotion that it felt like a story in itself. Her voice cracked slightly on a word, not from lack of skill, but from truth. Real, heartbreaking truth. And instead of weakening the performance, it strengthened it. It made her human, vulnerable, alive. Simon whispered something under his breath. The camera zoomed in just enough to catch it. "Oh, wow." 3 words he rarely said. He leaned closer, eyes soft, studying Leah with the seriousness of a man who had just discovered a once-in-a-generation voice. As Leah climbed into the build-up before the bridge, a subtle change happened on stage. The lighting crew, moved by her emotional delivery, instinctively shifted the lights, casting her in a warm golden hue that wrapped her like a halo. The reflective metal of her grandfather's microphone shimmered as she moved. She opened her eyes for the first time. During the performance, they were shining, not with fear anymore, but with something fierce, something beautiful, something victorious. She lifted her chin, pulling the mic closer, and then she belted, a note so powerful, so unexpected, so emotionally charged that the entire arena reacted like a shockwave had hit them. People shot to their feet, chairs scraped, hands flew to chests, some screamed, some laughed from the sheer disbelief, some cried without even realizing tears were falling. The judges all rose simultaneously, stunned. Heidi clasped her hands together at her chest, her eyes glassy. Sophia covered her mouth, shaking her head as if she couldn't process what she was hearing. Howie turned toward the crowd, gesturing wildly as if asking, "Are you hearing this too?" Simon stayed completely still. A rare smile slowly began to form on Simon Cowell's face. Not a smirk, not amusement, a real smile, soft, proud, amazed. Leah held the note. 10 seconds, 11, 12. Her voice didn't waver, not once. Every camera in the building focused on her. Every judge leaned in. Every person in the room was suspended in the same emotional orbit. And then she released the note with a gentle, controlled fall, landing perfectly back into the melody like a feather descending from the sky. The orchestra softened to let her shine. She delivered the final line of the song, voice trembling now, not with fear, but with overwhelming emotion. She closed the performance with a soft, tender whisper, her eyes glistening as she looked upward, toward the lights, toward the heavens, toward her grandfather. The last note lingered in the air, a pure, ringing echo. Then, silence. Perfect, breathtaking silence. For a split second, no one clapped. No one breathed. No one moved. It was the kind of silence that came when something extraordinary had just happened. Something so moving that apple. Oz felt almost disrespectful. Then the entire arena erupted. Thunderous, explosive, deafening applause. People screaming her name, some stamping their feet, some crying openly, some waving their hands like they had just witnessed a miracle. Leah stood there, breathless, stunned, her hands trembling around the old microphone. And the judges. Their reactions were only the beginning, fade out. For a moment, just one impossibly fragile moment, the entire AGT arena stood frozen in a stunned, breathless silence. Leah's final note still seemed to shimmer in the air like a trail of stardust. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, her wide eyes blinking rapidly in disbelief. She had done it. She had actually done it. The microphone, her grandfather's microphone, trembled in her hand, reflecting the gold of the stage lights. Then, the silence shattered. A tidal wave of applause crashed over the room, louder and more explosive than anything the audience had unleashed the entire night. The arena roared, shaking with thousands of voices screaming her name, clapping, cheering, crying, standing on chairs, waving their arms. It was madness. Beautiful madness. The judges didn't even try to speak over the crowd. They couldn't. Sophia had tears running down her face. Heidi clapped with both hands over her heart. Howie turned in a full circle, trying to make sense of the audience's reaction, and Simon didn't move. He was staring at Leah with an expression so unusual, so rare for him, that the cameras zoomed in automatically. Eyes wide, mouth slightly open, a softness in his features that the show's fans almost never saw. This wasn't admiration. This wasn't approval. This was something deeper. It was awe. The applause continued for nearly a full minute before it softened into a collective, expectant hush. The judges prepared to speak, leaning toward their microphones, but none of them got the chance. Because something unprecedented happened. Howie shot up from his chair so fast it startled even the front-row audience. His chair rolled backward behind him. Howie shouting, breathless, "No, wait! Listen, I can't! She's a star!" Simon whipped his head toward him, but not in disapproval. In alarm, because Howie wasn't just reacting emotionally. He was moving. He was moving toward the golden buzzer. The audience saw it. The arena screamed, but he wasn't alone. Out of the corner of his eye, Simon caught Heidi rising too, her hand flying to her mouth as she walked toward the button with tears streaming down her face. And Sophia stepped forward a split second later, actually jogging in heels, calling out, "Sophia, no, 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 don't press without me!" And then, as if some invisible switch had been flipped in his brain, Simon moved. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. He strode, fast, determined, intense. His eyes locked on the golden buzzer like he knew exactly what he wanted to do with it. The audience went insane. People held their heads. Some stood on their chairs. The noise was deafening. Every person screaming because something unbelievable was unfolding. All 4 judges were going for the golden buzzer. At the same time, Leah stood frozen on stage, eyes huge, hand clasped over her mouth. The old microphone hung by her side, her whole body shaking. The judges collided at the front of the table, literally collided. Heidi's hand bumped into Howie's. Sophia grabbed Heidi's wrist in mock desperation. Simon reached forward at the same time. 4 hands, 1 button. The entire arena held its breath. Everything slowed down. Then, boom, the golden buzzer detonated. The explosion of gold confetti was so powerful it seemed to erupt from every corner of the room, raining down like a glittering hurricane. Thousands of shimmering pieces spiraled through the air, catching the lights, painting the stage in a storm of gold. Leah gasped so hard she nearly dropped the microphone. The moment the confetti hit her, she collapsed to her knees, both hands flying to her face as sobs burst out of her. She wasn't just crying. She was overwhelmed, collapsing under the weight of a dream she never believed she deserved. The music kicked in, the golden buzzer anthem, loud, triumphant, soaring over the sound of the cheering crowd. The cameras caught the exact second Leah looked up into the falling gold. Tears streaked her cheeks, glistening under the lights. She whispered to the sky, "Grandpa, we did it." The audience broke again. More screams, more applause, more chaos. The hosts rushed onto the stage, careful not to slip on the confetti, helping Leah to her feet. But she could barely stand. Her legs wobbled beneath her as if the power of the moment was too much for her body to contain. Back at the judges' table, the chaos continued. Sophia hugged Heidi. Howie grabbed Simon's hand and lifted it in the air like both of them had just won a title fight. Simon swatted his hand away but was smiling, really smiling like a proud father seeing his child succeed. Then Simon stood, motioned for the music to lower, and walked toward the stage with a seriousness that silenced everything behind him. As he approached Leah, who was still wiping tears from her cheeks, overwhelmed, the confetti slowed, drifting like gentle flakes of gold snow. Simon reached the edge of the stage, looked up at her, and said something so soft the microphones barely caught it. "Simon, you didn't just sing tonight. You arrived." Leah covered her mouth again, shaking. Simon continued, voice low but full of sincerity. "Simon, that wasn't a performance. That was a story. That was your heart. And if your grandfather could see you right now—" He paused, his voice thickening, not with emotion, but with admiration. He would be the proudest man in the world. The audience melted, emotional beyond control. Even backstage crew members wiped their eyes. Leah stepped forward, bending down to hug Simon, something contestants rarely did unless he initiated it. But Simon didn't pull away. He hugged her back gently, supportively, like he knew exactly how heavy this moment was for her. The golden buzzer music swelled again. Gold kept falling. The hosts lifted her hands into the air. The crowd chanted her name. "Leah! Leah! Leah!" The judges clapped. The arena shook with celebration. And Leah stood in the center of the stage, bathed in gold light, covered in golden confetti, holding her grandfather's microphone against her heart. Lou, king like the star she had been born to become. It wasn't just a golden buzzer moment. It was a legacy, a promise fulfilled, a star born before the world's eyes. Fade out,